Welcome in Craft and Design 3.0. And for my dear audience, in this video, I will describe some different and much beautiful ideas of recycle cool welding project for decoring purpose or for sale or for different other purpose. So, dear audience, when we talk about cool welding project, then different question arise in our mind like is what is a cool welding project, or what is cool welding process, or what is the process of welding uh, metals, or what is the use of plastic welding machines and metal welding machines. So many other different in mixture point of view we can talk about I think these things. So the welding in cool process is carried out either by air or quick cooling method because cooling through the air weakness the resistance of the steel metal. Cooling by water improves the properties of the steel metal. A reduction factor should be used when air is used for cooling. And what is cold welded process? Because cold welding or contact welding is a solid state welding process that requires little or no heat or fusion to join two or more metals together. Instead, the energy used for creating a weld comes in the form of a pressure. And what is a process of welding? A mixture of plastic and metal welding. Then, first of all, we talk about a plastic welding. Plastic welding is a process of creating a molecules bond between two compatible thermoplastics. So, welding offers a superior strength and reduces cycle times. And there are three main steps to any weld, like as pressing, heating, and cooling. So, plastic welding in mix with the metal welding process are primarily differentiate by their heating method. So, uh, some some machines which are used in a mixture of plastic and metal welding, because plastic welding is used to join the thermoplastic by heating plastic pieces until they are malleable and then join into a un, un unified structures. So it is used in a wide range of sectors from infrastructure, anything which can be a repairable, plumbing or manufacturing of water tanks and heat exchangers, especially in metal heat exchanger are necessary and essential for heat. But in metal project, I say that. I think hot, and my dear audience think uh, high temperature are used for making these things, these recycle ideas, these ideas for decoring purpose or for other different purpose, or we can take up from one place to another, and we use it in a garden in a small lawn, or we can use it in also in a garden for decoring purpose when we talk about. But when we talk about in different other purpose, then different of our toys places also we can use it, or my dog audience use it for different children happiness purpose. So if we talk about in cooling project, cool welding project, then cooling purpose of cooling is a removal of heat, and removal of heat also essential because when a iron high temperature keep, then we put a water for making a cool procedure. It is a removal of heat usually resulting in a lower temperature and a phase change. So temperature lowering achieved by any other means may also be called cooling. The transfer of thermal energy may occur via thermal radiations, heat conduction or convection, and it can be used much used for molding process and For making a beautiful thing, for making a purposeful thing, it can be a long subjective. So, which process is cooling? Because process cooling, also known as a chiller, uses mechanical refrigeration to remove heat from a process. So, chiller are used in several applications, from machines, tools, to food processing and packaging, to medical imaging equipment. So, process cooling can maintain a constant fluid temperature and flow regardless of the load. So, who discovered cold welding? It is a historical question and much historical question. Because a discovery of cold pressure welding, Reverend Desagloyers discovered that if we took two lead balls about 25 each in diameter, pressed them together, and twice twisted them, then the two pieces would join together. And unlike in fusion welding, no liquid or molten phase is present in the joint. So cold welding was first recognized as a general material phenomenon in the 1940. It was then discovered that two clean flat surfaces of similar metal would strongly adhere if brought into contact while in a vacuum. See when there wall forces. So is cold welding easy? Yes, this process allows the two pieces to fuse together, creating a joint that's as strong as the original metal itself. However, cold welding can be a time consuming and expensive process. So, cold welding is a viable method for joining metals such as steel with the use of great pressure. So, what is called welding? Welding is a fabrication process also whereby two or more parts are fused together by means of heat, pressure, or both forming a joint as the part cooling. So, welding is usually used on metal and thermoplastic but can also be used on wood. But the completed weld joint may be referred to as a weldment. uh, in for making these things these ideas for making these objective for making pressure welding uses friction or explosion to heat the joining section of metal workpieces and join them under pressure. So the process is also called solid state welding. Pressure welding is a generic term for welding methods and that weld workpiece by applying mechanical pressure on the joining section. So, is plastic welding strong? Yes, plastic welding requires three essential things: temperature, pressure, and time. Without all three, plastic may be bonded but will lack the strength of a weld. So, when done properly, a plastic weld will be as strong as the surrounding material. But when we talk about in differentiation, it can be a metal welding is much strong than a plastic welding or plastic welding made things. So, uh, a welding procedure which can be used in a iron perfectly. It can be a long term and uh, much efficient uh, in but instead of a plastic and instead of a other different wooden things. If we colored or different color uses in, because when we talk about color proceeding, then uh, zinc are not also affected iron, because welding is distinct from lower temperature bonding techniques such as brazing and soldering. So we don't melt the base metal, parent metal, and instead require flowing filler metal to solidify their bonds. So in addition to melting the base metal in welding, a filler material is typically added to the joint to form a pool of molten material that cools to form a joint that based on weld configuration, but full penetration fillet can be stronger than the base material. Welding also requires a form of shield to protect the finer metals or melted metals from being contaminated or oxidized. So many different energy sources can be used for welding, including gas flame chemical and electric arc, also electrical, a laser, and electron beam, so as friction and ultrasound. While often an industrial process, welding may be performed in many different environments, including in open air and underwater. Also, a welding process completed, and that is a comprehensive and in outer space. But welding is a hazardous undertaking, and precautions are required to avoid burns, electric shocks, visions damage, inhalation of poisonous gases and fumes, and exposures to intense ultraviolet radiation. So until the end of 19th century, the only welding process was forge welding, which blacksmith had used for millennia to join iron and steel by heating and hammering. It is also a historical background of a welding procedure, or cycle welding process. So arc welding and oxy fuel welding, yeah, which is among the first process to develop late in the century, and electric resistance welding followed soon after. So welding technology advanced quickly during the early 20th century as world was drove the demand for reliable and inexpensive joining method. So, following the wars, several modern welding techniques were developed, including manual method like shielded metal arc welding. And my dear guys, when following the wars, several, when we talk about a historical background, then, following the wars, several modern welding techniques were developed, including manual method like shielded metal arc welding, one of the most popular welding method, as well as semi-automatic and automatic process such as gas metal arc welding, submerged arc welding, and flux core arc welding, and electro slag welding in metal proceeding. So development continued with the invention of laser beam welding, electron beam welding, and magnetic pulse welding and friction stir welding in the later half of the century. But today, as science continues to advance, so robot welding is commonplace in industrial setting, and researchers continue to develop new welding method and gain greater understanding of weld quality. But my dear guys, when we talk about the etymology, positioning of a welding proceeding, making the different thing, the term weld is derived from the Middle English as well, meaning to heat, to bring to a boil, and the modern word was probably derived from the past objective participle with the addition of d for this purpose being common in the Germanic language of the Angles and Saxons. It was first recorded in English in 1590. A 14th century translation of the Christian Bible into English by John Wycliffe translations. So Themisholan Valley to guide her waders into Sierras. They all well together their sword into plowshares, suggesting this particular use of the word probably became popular in English sometime between these periods. So the old, when we talk about English word for welding iron was samod, samad William, to bring together hot. So the word derived from the old Swedish word vela, meaning to boil, so which refer to joining metals when combined with the word of, for iron, as in a vela join. So Sweden was a large exporter of iron during the Middle Ages, so the word may have entered English from the Swedish iron trade or may have been imported with the thousands of Viking settlements that arrived in English before and during the Viking Age. As more than half of the most common English word in everyday use are Scandinavian or in origin. So, the historical background of that metal welding project, it is a um World War One caused a major surge in the use of welding, with the various military powers attempting to determine which of the several new welding process would be best. But the British primarily used arc welding, even constructing a ship, the flagger with an entirely welded hull. Arc welding was first applied to aircraft during the war, as well as some German airplane fuselages were constructed using the process. So, also noteworthy is the first welded road bridge in the world, the Moisinsen Bridge in Poland in 1928. So during the 1920, significant advances were made in welding technology, including the introduction of automatic welding in 1920, in which electrode wire was fed continuously. So shielding gas became a subject receiving much attention as scientists attempted to protect well from the effect of oxygen and nitrogen in the atmosphere. So porosity and brittleness was the primary problem, and the solution that developed include the use of hydrogen and argon, and also other different conductivity and convictions of stimulus development and automatic welding, alternate current, and flux fed a major expansion of arc welding during the 1930 and then during World War II. In 1930, the first all welded merchant vessels was MS Corlonian was launched. During the middle of the century, many new welding methods were invented. In 1930, Kyle Taylor was responsible for the release of stud welding, which soon became popular in shipbuilding and construction. So, submerged arc welding was invented the same year and continues to the popular today. My dear guys, especially I prescribe these historical evidence because a metal welding is much seriously procedure, and it can be a much effectively in different cause in different purpose, like as if but especially I prescribe for beautifulness purpose, for decoring purpose, and making different thing purpose. So the audience in 1932, a Russian Konstantin Korenov eventually implemented the first underwater electric arc welding. So as a gas tungsten arc welding, after decades of development, was finally perfected in 1941, and gas metal arc welding followed in 1948, allowing for fast welding of non-ferrous material but requires expensive shielding gas. So shielded metal arc welding was developed during the 1950 using a flux-coated consumable electrode, and it quickly became the most popular metal arc welding process. So in 1957, the flux-coated arc welding process debuted, in which the self-shielded wire electrode so could be used with automatic equipment, resulting in greatly increased welding speed. And that same year, so plasma arc welding was invented by Robert Gage. So electroslag welding was introduced, in 1958, and it was followed by its cousins, electrogas welding in 1961, and in 1953, the Soviet scientist N.F. Kazakov proposed the diffusion bonding method. Also, other recent development in welding include the 1958 breakthrough and of electrons beam welding, so making deep and narrow welding possible through the concentrated heat source, and also following the invention of laser in 1960. Laser beam welding debuted several decades later and has proved to be especially useful in high speed automated welding. So, dear audience, by these video of recycle metal welding project for decoring purpose or for selling purpose is much uh, longer, and I think that you can learn from my video much a lot of, and you inspired me my video, my dear guys. I especially thanks for you because you listen me and listen my video, and your affectionate love. So thank you very much, guys, for watching my video because you love with me a lot of and my idea. You also a lot of thankful for watching. So thank you very much, guys. Once again, thank you very much.